Hello everyone, welcome to Keeping Up with the Creek, Lower Phelan Creek Project's annual fall fundraiser. My name is Michelle Bowman. I am Sisituan Kawakbetuan Dakota and also Scottish, and I am our communications and events coordinator here at Lower Phelan Creek Project. I want to thank you all so much for joining us tonight for the celebration of our 10-year anniversary as a nonprofit here on the East Side. As many of you know, we have some super exciting things happening here at Lower Phelan Creek Project. Next month on Indigenous Peoples Day, we will be breaking ground for the Wakantipi Center, which will be a Dakota Cultural and Environmental Interpretive Center on the east side of St. Paul, located at Wakantipi, a Dakota sacred site, also known as Bruce Bento Nature Sanctuary. As our events coordinator, I get to see a lot of the good work that we're doing, and this past year has really touched my heart in a lot of ways. We've been able to create over 500 medicine bundles for community members full of our traditional teas and medicines while we were going through COVID. We planted our first ever medicine garden this year, and we picked up and removed over 2,000 pounds of trash from Wakantipi, or also known as Bruce Bento Nature Sanctuary. We just held our annual Pollinator Festival, and we get to work with school groups all the time. Last week, we even got the chance to meet with some Dakota and Ojibwe language students from Bedote to make over 70 sheets of seed paper that will be planted at Wakantipi. We have a really small team here at Lower Phelan Creek Project, and while we might just be a team of 6, our Tioshpai is so much bigger than that. It's because of community members like you, our volunteers, our donors, that we've been able to host all of these beautiful events. It seems like each year we keep growing and growing, and none of this work would be possible without the support of our community members. Our goal of the night is to raise $35,000 to keep building our capacity and sustaining this good work. So far, I'm extremely excited to announce that we've raised over $14,500, and with your help, we can reach the rest of that amount tonight. We have a longtime generous donor to Lower Phelan Creek Project that has super generously offered a $25,000 matching gift. So all donations given tonight will be matched up to $25,000, meaning your gift will have double the impact. This evening, we have a wonderful program planned for you all, and I'm so excited that everyone is here. You'll get the chance to hear from Lower Phelan Creek Project volunteers about our work and how it has touched their hearts and lives. I'm super excited that we get to share our new promotional video. You'll get a chance to sit in on a fireside chat with Lower Phelan Creek Project leadership and hear all about our change to becoming Native-led and why that was so important. And finally, we'll have a conversation on the land back movement with examples from Indian country with Dr. Kate Bean and President Robert Larson of Chanshayapi, or the Lower Sioux community. I am so happy that you all are here, and I want to take a moment to say Wopira Tanka. Many thanks to our sponsors at the Bush Foundation, Mayors and Power, Interfluve, Landmark Environmental, Milestone Real Estate Partners, Native Roots Radio, and Estella Young. But before we get into this wonderful program that we have planned for you all, I want to hand it over to Lower Phelan Creek Project Board Member Chante Maza, or Neil McKay. Chante Maza is Spirit Lake Dakota, and he is a wonderful Dakota language teacher at the University of Minnesota and also at the American Indian Center here in Minneapolis. So without further ado, I want to just hand it over to Dekshi Chante Maza.
Opida Trojan. Homitakepi. Dakodia Chante Maza ish Machbia Chanduhu by Hemiedo. Pero Wakantua Dakota Himacha Kanaku Mini Wakayanki Hicha Omamapi. Atiwe Dakota Inawe Chachatwa Heink by Hicha Omapi. Hochtai to Kinde Oasin Chante Washter Naku Iokpia. Nape choose Apido. So say hello, my relatives. I'm Chante Maza, or Machpia Chanduhupa. My English name is Neil McKay, and I'm Bidawakantuan, Dakota, and enrolled at the Spirit Lake Reservation. My dad is Dakota, my mom is Ojibwe. She's a citizen of the Turtle Mountain Nation, but she grew up at Spirit Lake. on behalf of the board of directors for the Lower Phelan Creek project, wanted to send good greetings. In fact, when we say "Oas in chante washten choose apido," it's from a good heart, or from my heart. I shake each and every one of your hands. So I have been involved with one part of Lower Phelan for over a decade now, and that's Wakan Tipi. And Wakan Tipi, and I know being involved on various boards at Lower Phelan now for over 10 years, it's always been about education and bringing what we know out into the community and trying to make that change. And I know on the website it says urban restoration and conservation, environmental education, cultural connections and healing. And I've seen that consistently with all that is happening, not just at Wakan Tipi, but some of the other areas. And also at the same time, bringing an awareness to the original people of the land here, who are Dakota people. So I am part of the original people that were here. And so I will end there. Henak Jado.
Wopira Shicheshi, Chante Maza. Thank you so much for offering those words, and on behalf of the board of directors, I really appreciate that, starting us off in a good way. Hamitaki Yepi, Maggie Lorenza Makiapi, Chante Washten Apeachiuzapi. Friends and relatives, I am really excited to be here with you tonight. My name is Maggie Lorenz, and I am the executive director for Lower Phelan Creek Project. I am also the director for the Wakan Tipi Center project that we're starting. So I'm really excited and honored to be here with all of you today virtually. And I really wish I could be with you all in person. I know we have so many people in our community that I haven't seen for so long, and there's so many new people in our community that I haven't even met yet over the last year and a half or so of COVID. And I'm just really looking forward to meeting you all again when the time is right. But for now, we're here virtually together to celebrate our 10-year anniversary of Lower Phelan Creek Project as a nonprofit organization. But I think most of you, or many of you, know that Lower Phelan Creek Project actually has a history far longer than just 10 years. In fact, one of our biggest accomplishments as an organization was the establishment of Bruce Vento Nature Sanctuary, which took place almost 6 years before this organization was established as a nonprofit. So the good work of this group has been happening for so many years, and really the history of this organization, the story about how this organization started, which we'll talk about a little later in the program, is just really inspirational to me and just really speaks to the power of what can happen when good people come together with good minds and hearts and passion for a shared cause and persist in that cause over time. And so the good work that this organization has been doing is only grown since the organization has become established as a 501c3 back in 2011. And now here we are 10 years later, and we've grown from an organization that was run by the board of directors with no staff to an organization that had one executive director that we hired in 2015. From there, I joined the organization in 2019 as the full-time Wakan Tipi Center director, and then shortly after as the executive director. But at that time, it was just myself as the only full-time staff member. We had 2 part-time staff members. And today, 2.5 years later, we have 5 full-time staff members. And we're only going to continue to grow with the Wakan Tipi Center opening in 2 years. So we're very, very excited about this growth. But obviously, that means that we need our community to grow with us. And that's why we're here tonight. We have this goal of raising $35,000 to continue to support the work that we're doing, to continue to support our growth as an organization and presence here on the East Side. One of the things that we're doing, of course, is breaking ground next month on Wakan Tipi Center. And this is a project that has been in the works for, like Chante Maza was saying, for more than a decade. we've been working as an organization and really community members and Dakota people and Native people together working towards this shared goal. And we're going to be breaking ground on this center next month. And there's a lot of work that's going on behind the scenes, not just about the construction of a building, but really about the whole story and all of the work that goes to interpreting that story. But we're also more dedicated now than ever to daylighting Phelan Creek. So the name of our organization, Lower Phelan Creek Project, this is the reason that we started this organization, is to daylight or resurface this body of water, which has historically flowed from the south end of Lake Phelan through the east side, through Sweet Hollow Park, and through what is now Bruce Vento Nature Sanctuary, and ultimately flowed into the Mississippi River, where the mouth of the Wakantipi Cave was historically. Unfortunately, due to development and settler colonization, that creek and that waterway was driven underground and has been underground for about 100 years. So, you know, there are so many benefits to daylighting or bringing this creek back above ground, and that's something that we've been really working hard to do, and working with a lot of our partners and Eastside neighbors and community organizations and district councils. But not only will we increase the aquatic and riparian habitat along this waterway for our animal relatives, but we will also create new ways for community to interact with the natural world while increasing capacity for stormwater management, which is a really big concern right now with climate change. This project would also just make sure that more of the water that gets to the Mississippi is clean when it gets there. So this is a really big project. It's a really important project, and really the spiritual significance of having flowing water through your community really can't be understated. So this is something that we're really dedicated to, and we're making a lot of headway and a lot of progress. And I can't wait to talk to you all more about the daylighting project here in the coming months. But right now, of course, we are still providing ongoing land stewardship for Bruce Vento Nature Sanctuary. So this is an area where I think a lot of people who might be tuning in now, a lot of our volunteers and donors are really familiar with this area. This is a 27-acre nature sanctuary that's right between the east side of St. Paul and Lower Town St. Paul, and is the home to the Wakantipi sacred site, the sacred cave. We, as an organization, were instrumental and in leading that that land reclamation and restoration to a natural space. And now, for the last 15 years, we've been taking the stewardship very seriously there. We take our role quite seriously to make sure that that habitat stays healthy and thrives. And so last year, we were able to dust off our old 2001 natural resources management plan for the site. We partnered with the City of St. Paul and Friends of the Mississippi River to update that natural resources management plan. And now we have a 5-year plan ahead of us that we're just starting to work together again with Friends of the Mississippi and the City of St. Paul on bringing some great restoration and resources to this site to make sure that we're providing high quality habitat, native habitat, for all of our relatives for decades to come. So as construction is set to kick off for Wakantipi Center, we are also doing a lot of behind the scenes work with our steering committee to dream together and create all of the interpretive themes and exhibits that will bring this center to life and really bring our vision to life. And so I really want to give a shout out right now to all of our tribal historic preservation officers that have been working with us on this project. Leonard Wabasha, Frankie Jackson, Noah White, Joey Taylor, Cheyenne St. John, and Samantha Odegaard. I just want to say, Wolfita, thank you so much for all of your help over the long haul for this project. Yesterday, I attended a meeting in Siston, and it was hosted by the Tribal Historic Preservation Office there, along with the office of the chairman. And something really stuck with me from that meeting. The Tribal Historic Preservation Officer, her name's Tamara St. John, and she said that, you know, this work is really not something that is a job that you can really clock in and out for. It means a lot more than that. And it just really stuck with me because even though I'm not working for my tribe, I'm working here in an urban area. I'm a Native person and I'm working in my homelands. And the work that we're doing is something I bring home with me every night too. It's really personal to me. It's very personal to me, the work that we're doing. And because of that, it's also very personal to me, all of the relationships that I'm building now and everybody who supports this work. So I just want to say thank you so much from the bottom of my heart to everybody who is here, who has already donated and given to this work for our fall fundraiser. This is our biggest fundraiser of the year, and your support means now so much to us now more than ever. Like Michaela said, we have a really generous donor and friend of our organization who was offered up a $25,000 challenge match. So every dollar that's donated up to $25,000 will be matched by this donor. So please, if you ever thought about giving to this organization, tonight's the night. And I really just want to turn it over now. Me, myself, and our staff have had so much fun over this last month working with Native Roots Radio and their production team to create like a little get to know us video for Lower Phelan Creek and our staff. So without further ado, I just want to give y'all a glimpse into our work. And here is our 2021 Keeping Up with the Creek video.
My name is Maggie Lorenz. I am Dakota and Ojibwe. I am from both Turtle Mountain and Spirit Lake Nation. I am the Executive Director for Lower Phelan Creek Project and the Director for Wakan Teepee Center. Well, I've been involved with Lower Phelan Creek Project for officially as a staff member since March of 2019, but prior to that, I was involved as a board member. Before that, I was a consultant for the organization, and then before that, I was a volunteer. So really, I've been involved since about 2017 in a lot of different capacities with the work that Lower Phelan Creek Project does on the east side. Well, Lower Phelan Creek Project started in 1997 by a group of volunteers and environmental professionals and activists who really had a desire to bring some more resources and environmental stewardship to the east side parks and green spaces. Informal start with a volunteer group in 1997. The group became formally organized in 2011 as a 501c3 nonprofit. And so this is our 10th year as a nonprofit organization on the east side. When Lower Phelan Creek Project started as a volunteer group in the late 90s, the first big project the organization took on was the establishment of Bruce Vento Nature Sanctuary down on, it's kind of like at the edge of the east side and the edge of the lower town, St. Paul neighborhoods. And through that process of reclaiming that site, which was an abandoned rail yard and really polluted, toxic environmental site, through the process of reclaiming that and restoring that site, the organizational leadership really learned about the significance of the site as a cultural, a Dakota sacred site to Native people. And so that was really the start of becoming a Native-led organization. In 2017, made an actual strategic goal to become Native-led. And then it was in 2019 with onboarding of some new board members and then hiring of the new executive director, which is me, as a Native woman, we actually were able to realize that goal of becoming Native-led. So the project to daylight Phelan Creek is really the project that spurred the genesis of our organization. So this has been a long-term vision for the organization to bring back above ground or daylight this creek that historically has flowed from the south end of Lake Phelan through the east side down and then ultimately drained into the Mississippi River right by the Wakan Teepee Cave in Bruce Vento Nature Sanctuary.
Hamidakwe, my name is Michaela Bowman. I am Sisituan Kawakbekmo Dakota, and I am our communications and events coordinator here at Lower Phelan Creek Project, and I've been working here for about 3.5 years. I think it's really important that our organization made that shift to become a Native-led because these lands are our homelands, and the plants and the animals and the trees and the waterways and Unchimakar, Grandmother Earth, has provided our people for so long so many gifts, and our communities have worked tirelessly for generations to care for these lands and to care for the waterways and the plants and the animals, and we know best, and those are our stories and our songs and our language, and so many of our community members bring to the forefront that the land loves to hear our language, and the land loves our people, and our people love the land. And it's important that as we work to care for the land and nurture the land that it's coming from our own community.
Bonjour, I'm Iva Rasmussen. I'm with the Lakui Band of Ojibwe Indians out of Haywood, Wisconsin, and I'm the administrative coordinator at Lower Phelan Creek Project. I believe that by giving ourselves, our commitment to the land, the community, and by helping save all of that, we will be saving ourselves in the future.
None of our work would be possible at Lower Phelan Creek Project without the generosity of our community. And so, as a Dakota person, generosity is one of the core values of kind of who we are as a people, but that only works if everybody does it. And so if there's only a handful of people who are pitching in and being generous, it can be really hard on those handful of people. But the things that can be accomplished when the whole community puts their resources together is amazing. So I think that the work that we're doing at Lower Phelan Creek Project for local residents and for people who care about the kind of work that we're doing, it's an incredible cause to give to. And it's another way to support the work. If you can volunteer, you can serve on our boards, and you can also support the work that we do with a donation and generosity as well.
Well, thank you so much. It was like truly a pleasure to get to see our work represented. I mean, it's always great to see the work that you do yourself through someone else's eyes, seeing things from a higher perspective. I think it really just like encapsulates how lucky we are with the work that we do here at Lower Phelan Creek Project. And I have the honor of introducing the three panelists of our fireside chat. So this is going to be a brief conversation with three leaders from Lower Phelan Creek Project and people who have been instrumental to the organization. And they're going to talk about our recent transition to becoming Native-led. It's a question that we get all the time, both why, when, and how we decided to make that unique change. And I think this conversation is really going to answer some of those questions tonight. So first and foremost, Maggie Lorenz, an East Side resident who started with Lower Phelan Creek Project as a volunteer, grew into the role of a community engagement consultant, joined the board in 2018, was hired as the Wakan Teepee Center director in 2019, and in the same year became the executive director as well. Maggie is from the Turtle Mountain Band of Ojibwe and the Spirit Lake Dakota Nation, and we are so lucky to have her leadership. And who better to talk about the organization than someone who's served almost every role that you can within our network. Tonight we also have Dan McGinnis with us. Dan is our longest serving board member, one of the original signers of our Articles of Incorporation in 2011. And Dan has also served at various times as the organization's board chair, the executive director, and the role he currently is in is as a board member and chair of Lower Phelan Creek Project's Governance Committee. Welcome, Dan. And last but certainly not least, we're so happy to have Daniela Bell with us. Daniela has a long history with Lower Phelan Creek Project, and you're going to sense a pattern here. At various times, she has served as a board member. She has been the chair of the board, and she is currently serving as the co-chair of the Capital Campaign Committee for the Wakan Teepee Center. So welcome, all three of you. Thank you so much for coming, and I'm going to hand it over.
Thanks so much, Sam. Good evening, I'm Daniela Bell, and as Sam said, I first joined what was called the steering committee for Lower Phelan Creek Project in 2011. And then because I showed up to so many meetings, they asked me to join the board in 2014. And then at some point in there, I was, as Sam said, the board chair. And now I am honored to be the co-chair with Patrice Kunish of the Wakan Teepee Center Capital Campaign Committee. So over my time with the organization, I've seen the organization's partnerships with Dakota and other Native peoples grow to become more and more important. And during my tenure as chair and then beyond, the board of Lower Phelan Creek Project became increasingly aware that we needed to grow from partnering with to being led by Native people. So I'm really thrilled that we have gotten to this place now where Lower Phelan Creek Project is Native led both at the board and the staff levels. And it might look like from the outside that this change happened very quickly, but in fact, it's the culmination of years of work. So joining me to talk about this history are Dan McGinnis and Maggie Lorenz. Dan and Maggie, can you introduce yourselves, or in the case of Maggie, reintroduce yourselves? Dan, let's start with you.
Okay. Hello, Daniela. Hello, everyone. Good evening. My name is Dan McGinnis. I'm an East Side resident of St. Paul and non-native. I've served in multiple capacities with Lower Phelan Creek Project. I've been a board member. I've been interim executive director. I've been a volunteer for about 18 years. I got involved in 2003 initially with the organization when several people from the community got together as part of a larger Mississippi River cleanup, and we removed 50 tons of trash from the abandoned rail yard, which was to become Bruce Vento Nature Sanctuary in Wakan Tipi. So I got started picking up trash, and here I am.
Maggie.
Yes, Hamitaki Ake. Again, my name is Maggie Lorenz, and I'm the executive director for Lower Phelan Creek. And like Sam said, I've been involved in different ways over the last few years, I guess 4 years now. Definitely feel like a newbie to the team with some of these other folks that I'm working with who have been with the organization for so long. But it's just been really great to be part of the team and kind of see it, like Sam was saying, through these different levels of involvement. So I'm really excited for this conversation tonight.
Great, thank you. Dan, can you talk a little bit about who exactly founded Lower Phelan Creek Project and why the organization was founded?
Sure. Actually, the early roots of this organization go back to the mid-1990s when Olivia Irvine Dodge was president at the time of the St. Paul Garden Club. And the Garden Club, and with Olivia's leadership, took on the idea of restoring what was then Sweet Hollow below the Hams Brewery and down toward the Mississippi River, East 7th Street, restoring that to green space and eventually as a park, and cleaning up the water quality in Lower Phelan Creek, which at that time even was mostly below ground. So that was maybe the early start of the organization, but it was local residents like Carol Carey and Karen DePaul who lived in the neighborhood, who went on to spin off from that work to create Friends of Sweet Hollow. And Friends of Sweet Hollow, in turn, created the Lower Phelan Creek Project, and really kind of extended the work that was being done at Sweet Hollow to include the entire corridor, the former creek corridor from Lake Phelan all the way down to the Mississippi River. I think it's interesting, as I've been looking back in preparation for this, I realized that almost all of our board chairs, our executive directors, and most of our key consultants were women. And this has been and continues to be a very strongly led women-led organization. And so I'm one of the minority here, but as Daniela said, I've been around maybe among the longest.
Okay, going from that initial foundation, why did the organization decide to become Native-led, and how exactly did that happen? Dan?
Well, in the early years of the organization, up until about 2001, our focus really was on developing a vision for Lower Phelan Creek as a green space and native habitat. we weren't talking much about interpretation or even an interpretive center. We were focusing on acquiring and cleaning up the old rail yard that became the sanctuary. It's a 27-acre site. And I think there was a turning point that occurred in 2001 to 2004 when Ann Ketz and the 106 group doing cultural resource studies was retained by the Trust for Public Land in the city in Lower Phelan Creek to take a look at the site and determine what the cultural significance of the site might be. And out of that came the realization that Wakan Tipi, as a sacred site, Dakota's sacred site, carried an immense amount of significance, which we hadn't really comprehended when we started this work. And so there were 3 studies done between 2001 and 2004, and they ultimately did decide that Wakan Tipi does qualify for, or is eligible to be designated, part of a natural historic site and placed on the registry of National Historic Sites or National Historic Places. And that really happened before we were even talking about an interpretive center. So over the last 20 years, I think through increasing contact and communications with Dakota and Ojibwe educators and Native leaders and community members, we've gone from being an organization of white people wanting to do something for Native people to becoming an organization that wants to work with Native people, to now finally realizing that we need an organization that needs to be Native-led. We're now emerging as a Native-led organization with strong values of inclusivity. And I think in the process of this, ongoing discussions and process of education, at least speaking for myself, I'm really starting to comprehend the meaning of the Native phrase, all my relatives. And that implies inclusivity in maybe a way that I had never thought of before. So our impact now is starting to be felt not only in the Phelan Creek corridor, but all along the Mississippi River in St. Paul.
Yeah, I remember a very key turning point, at least for me and maybe for the organization as a whole, was when one of our former executive directors, Melanie Kleiss, relayed a question from some of our Indigenous partners. And that question was, would the board consider having the organization be Native-led? And so that was just this moment where the board had to sort of sit with that question and really pushed us along on this journey towards transformation to being Native-led. It was a really exciting time, I think, to be a board member and to realize that some of us needed to step back and allow the organization to transform and become what it is today and what it is going to be going forward. Now, Maggie, you joined the organization after Lower Phelan Creek Project determined that it wanted to become Native-led, but that transition really happened under your leadership. What was that like? Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, coming on board the organization as, when I came on, it was not Native-led, but I knew that the organization had a goal to become Native-led. And I've worked, previously with a lot of organizations, big and small, that, had a lot of strategic goals, I guess, if you will, about diversity and inclusion that really seemed like once I realized, when the rubber meets the road, I guess, that really wasn't, people weren't ready for that. So I was excited, but I was also a little bit nervous to see how the board would react when, if I started making a push to actually implement some of those changes. And I was just, I can't begin to talk about how thrilling it was to be part of an organization where the will of the organization met, those goals that they had written down, that they had talked about. So I, started working my personal relationships to bring in people like Patrice Kunish, who you guys will hear from next, and Kate Bean, who also is going to be talking tonight. But some other people from our American Indian community here in the Twin Cities who just are powerful leaders in their own right, who had a lot of skills and experience they thought they could bring to the organization. So it was about building those relationships and I think gaining the trust of people that this wasn't just more talk from a lot of organizations that say they want to do this DEI work, but that this is something that was actually people wanted to implement here at Lower Phelan Creek. So, building those relationships, partnerships with the tribes was really important because we're talking about not just serving American Indian people in the urban area, but we're talking about stewardship of sacred sites. And that's really takes it to a different level. So making sure that we have those strong relationships with the tribes and with their tribal historic preservation offices, that we are partnering and collaborating and getting that consultation along the way, absolutely was really important. And then just doing events, starting to do events that were meaningful to the American Indian community here in the urban area. I think all of those things really helped the community see that this is a organization where there, are collective issues that are important to our community were going to be handled in an appropriate way, and that I'm just really excited that I was able to be here for this amazing transition.
So can you both talk a little bit more about why it was important to become Native-led and what has changed since that transition took place from your perspectives?
Yeah, the organization change from being primarily white-led to a Native-led organization, both on staff and board, came about through many, many conversations, both among Native people and non-Native people, and among all of us together at various times. It was a gradual process, but I think for me, I remember a very key turning point about 2 years ago this fall. We had a board retreat and board meeting that was actually led by a Native organization that led the retreat and led us through a rigorous process of looking back at who we were and what we were becoming, what our goals were. And in the midst of that retreat, we had a board meeting and we appointed Maggie as our executive director and Wakan Tipi Center director. She had been our interim director, and we took that important step, and we also took the step of agreeing to expand her board to include even more Native representation, to the point where we would be at least 50% or more Native-led. And we've accomplished that, but that was I watched with great interest as a non-Native person, sort of the gradual transformation of my fellow non-Native board members and myself, and our points of view and our thinking as we became more and more aware of the significance of the site, of the significance of the Dakota people and the land that this site, this Dakota land that this is, where this is located. And to me now, as we enter into the phase of interpreting and educating Natives and non-Natives about this place, and the history, the natural and cultural history, as well as contemporary issues, I can't imagine that we could do this job with real, true integrity and authenticity unless we were Native-led, because it's the Native story that needs to be told, and it's not my place to say this is how they did it. I've got to step back and let Native people lead the conversation, and I want to be part of that conversation, but it's the leadership now is where it needs to be.
Yeah, I think, for me, when I think about the importance of why this work being Native-led, it's just the types of decisions that are made, I think, even by really well-meaning people who want to do things in an appropriate way for other communities, that's usually not going to end up working out right, because you can't really do something for another community in a way that's going to be appropriate and following all of their cultural protocols if you don't come from that community. So really, I think that just the work that's happening here, the kind of partnerships that we're building with the city of St. Paul, and these, private, public-private, and tribal partnerships, these like amazing three-way partnerships that we're building. I mean, I don't think that the momentum that we're building right now, what we're doing now, could have been possible if, like Dan was saying, if we weren't doing this from an authentic position as being a Native-led organization. Representation matters, and I think that they say nothing for us without us, and so it's great that people want to be allies with Native people, but the work has to be led when it's a Native issue by Native people.
This is such a great and interesting story, and we can't possibly cover all of the details tonight. What can people do if they want to learn more about how Lower Phelan Creek Project made this transition? What comes next?
Yeah, that's a great question too. And I guess tonight is a little bit of a teaser for folks because we just have so much to say. We have a lot of stories to tell. And so while we can only share a little bit, and I hope this answered some people's questions tonight about how this transition happened from our organization to become Native-led, we have a much larger story to tell about how we're doing this work. And so fortunately for us and for everybody else who's really interested in this type of work and how maybe these type of changes can be implemented in your own organizations or communities, we recently received a grant from the Bush Foundation for $100,000 to help us tell this story. And so that's the work that we're going to be doing for the next couple of years, is working with communications consultants and working with our community to build this story and come up with tools and resources to help people who want to be able to do this own work in their communities. So that's definitely one way that we're going to be telling this story and sharing out the work that we're doing. But Dan is also working on a really, really cool project to tell the story of our transition as a Native-led organization. Dan, do you want to talk about that?
Yes. Well, I sort of fell into the role of historian for the organization in a sense, and so I am working on a history of Lower Phelan Creek Project, kind of a behind-the-scenes history of how we became who we are and why. An expansion of the story that we've been talking about tonight, and we are looking forward to actually doing a couple of things with this information. One, publishing it in a local history magazine, and secondly, using it for some of our interpretive materials at Wakan Teepee Center. So stay tuned. There's a much bigger story to tell.
Thanks so much, Maggie and Dan, and Wopida to all of our friends and supporters out there watching tonight. Thanks.
Thanks, Daniela.
Thank you.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Wopilatanka to Maggie and Dan and to everyone behind the scenes, Daniela and Robert Pilot. I'm Patrice Kunish. I am the chair of Lower Phelan Creek Board of Directors. I'm also serving as co-chair with Daniela on the capital campaign. I'm so happy to see so many of our family and friends joining us tonight. And speaking of family, we have a real treat for you tonight. I'd like to introduce Madison Hand. She is a youth intern at Lower Phelan Creek Project. She's Oglala Lakota from Pine Ridge and Mdewakanton Dakota from Prairie Island. She is also the daughter of our executive director, Maggie Lorenz, and her husband, Barry Hand. So, Madison, welcome.
Hi. Hamitaketi Madison Hand Miecha, Oyate Mitaki, Oglala Nabedwakatuan, Ewichaki Abisto. Maniatu ake mazapta naku Indonesia ska awati. So hello my friends and relatives, my name is Madison Hand. I'm 15 years old and I currently live on the east side of St. Paul. I come from both the Oglala Lakota Nation and Prairie Island Indian community. So throughout this last year, I've helped volunteer in a handful of ways with the organization. Some of my favorite times volunteering and some of my most memorable times. The first one was earlier this spring. We went to the sanctuary and we did a trash cleanup, and we ended up removing 2,000 pounds of trash from the sanctuary, which was crazy to think about, that there's like just that much trash that's down there and even still down there. But it was also just nice to be a part of that and to be able to laugh and visit with everybody after, you know, a long winter of not really being able to see people. So it was a nice way to come together, but also really just like disheartening that there's that much trash in a place that's, you know, sacred to us. So that was one of my favorite times. Another one was me and my mom, sometimes we go down there and like remove invasive species. Last summer, I believe it was, we went down there and we removed mullein, buckthorn, and thistle. And the thistle was not very fun. It was a hot day and it was very sharp because it has thorns all over the place, if you don't know what thistle is. So that was kind of not very fun, but also just nice to be able to take care of that sanctuary and be able to make room for the native plants to be able to grow and thrive in that area. So that was really nice. Another one of the things I've helped with is Michelle asked me to do some audio recordings for the website. So I recorded some words of places here in the cities. For example, a couple of the places was I did Wakbatanka, which was the Mississippi River, and for Wakantipi, which is often mispronounced. So those are just some resources so people can kind of understand or be able to pronounce these things correctly. And currently I am working with Clues and Lower Phelan Creek Project with another youth in the community to develop a mural to go down in Sweet Hollow Park. So we're doing the story of the Mexican immigrants that live there, and there's actually like a whole bunch of different immigrant communities that live there, but we're doing the story of the Mexican community because they got pushed out, and we're also doing the Dakota people. So we're trying to like find a way to incorporate both of those and create a mural. So I'm really excited for that, and it's gonna be nice. The reason I like volunteering for this organization is because I believe in a lot of the work that they do here. They take care of the sacred site down by the river, and they take care of the land around it as well. So also that means like educating people, even the mounds up above it, you know, they're trying to educate people that it's a cemetery and how to just be able to conduct yourself when you're in those areas and all those different types of things. And they just take care of the land, and yeah, I really like that. So I really like volunteering for this organization and helping out. I also just kind of like being outdoors and helping with plants and stuff. So yeah, thank you.
Wopila Tankayala, Maddie. You're most welcome here, and you continue the legacy of your family, which is very strong. Haumadaku Yapi, hello, my relatives. Lakota Chitang Hitagahem Ye, and Lakota, I am Bravehawk. Lewashichu Iya, Thomas Draskovic Hemye. In English, my name is Thomas. I currently sit on the board of directors for Lower Phelan Creek Project, and I'm part of the governance board. And I am Hunkpapa Lakota, Naha Wachbe Kuta Dakota, and I am an enrolled citizen of the Standing Rock Nation. And I welcome you all, and I hope you're all doing well. And I would like to talk to you guys tonight about two of our panelists, and we're going to have a discussion about the land back movement. But first, I think we should probably start just a little bit of what that means. What is a land back movement? Basically, it's the reclamation of everything basically stolen from Indigenous people, restoration of our relationship to Mother Earth, and stewardship of the land according to our original teachings. So that is something that Lower Phelan Creek Project is very deeply rooted in. And tonight, to help put that more forward to you, we're going to have two panelists. So I want to introduce our two panelists first. We have Kate Bean, who is at Flanju Santee, Dakota. She is a board member here at Lower Phelan Creek Project, and she's Director of American Indian Initiatives at the Minnesota Historical Society. And she's a lead organizer for the Bde-Makaska name restoration. So tonight, Kate will be speaking to the importance of Indigenous name restorations based on her learnings from Bde-Makaska. And then our second panelist we have here is President Robert Larson. He is from the Lower Sioux Indian community, and he'll speak to the importance of actual return of land to tribes based on learnings from the recent land transfer to Lower Sioux from the state of Minnesota. And so I'd like to start by asking you, Kate, can you please share a brief overview of the Bde-Makaska name restoration and why your family decided to pursue that effort? And pretty much, why was it important to you?
Sure. So can you hear me all right? Hamitaki epi Kate Bean, makiapie hadipu ende me, damakota Bde-Wakantuan gawakpetuan, hemanchaye, wapai pakshain mawapi. So hello, my relatives. My name is Dr. Kate Bean. I'm known in Dakota as Brings Them Home Women. I'm Bde-Wakantuan and Wakpetuan Dakota, as Thomas mentioned, and I am Dakota. I'm a citizen of Fundraiser Santee Sioux. But what that means essentially is I come from, even though I wasn't raised here in Minnesota, I'm Dakota and I am from Minnesota. I always tell people that I am home here again. Bde-Ota Edwati Ake. I'm here home again because our family was removed after the Dakota War of 1862. And you know, we come from Black Dogs Village, which today most people know as Eagan, Minnesota. There's a village site there near those outlets, you know, those suburbs. We look at them differently here. Those are our old village sites, and those are our home territories. And we also come from Bde-Makaska, from Heato Tume, or the village to the side. And a number of years ago, my family returned home to Minnesota, and our father took us over to Bde-Makaska. What I had known about that lake was what my grandfather, Charles Eastman, had written in his books and what I had heard in terms of stories that were passed down. And what I realized as an adult coming to this place was that I didn't see ourselves. I didn't see our stories. You know, we here as people who didn't even grow up in Minnesota, but are from here, the indigenous people of this place knew more about this place than the people who lived here and had the privilege of growing up here. And so we decided to change that. And essentially, you know, after a lot of struggles growing up, I went to college, and I didn't graduate from high school. My twin sister and I, neither one of us graduated from high school. But in learning our Dakota language and reconnecting with our language and being prideful of who we are as young Dakota people, back then we were young, we became reconnected to this place, and we realized the connection between landscape and place and language was all intertwined, and it impacted us as professionals and as women, and then eventually as mothers. And so what we wanted to do is we wanted to change that landscape. We wanted a return. And so part of that overall effort is to build awareness, to create an acknowledgement. But I think we've been working on acknowledgement for a long time, and we're ready for that next phase, right? We want the return, a return of our indigenous names, the returns of our lands. Those are the things we're working towards. And the name restoration is a part of that. It's a piece. What it did is it had a ripple effect. And essentially, we were asked to participate on a community advisory committee. My twin sister and I were, my twin sister Carly Badharpel. We were asked to participate on a committee, and we did. And we advocated for the inclusion of Native perspectives at that place, at Bde-Makaska. We advocated for signage that talked about who we are, that mentioned us, that mentioned our stories, things that were important to us. We talked about the parking. We talked about how to make the place welcome for people all over the cities, because the parks belong to the people. It belongs to the public, not just the wealthy white homeowners who live around the lake. And there was a lot of pushback from some of these individuals, and there were definitely some difficult moments where we weren't treated very kind. We received hate mail, still do, and we ended up having to deal with a lot of that. But in doing that, what we were able to do is create awareness, and we went to people's living rooms. We went and talked to park board members, Hennepin County commissioners, and legislators, and we talked about who we are. We simply told our story. Our dad's a community organizer. We organized around storytelling. We simply said who we are and what our connection to this place was. And throughout that process, essentially what ended up happening is the public decided they wanted a name restoration. We didn't ask for that. The public asked for it. And the park board agreed that they would support that, which it then went to Hennepin County. The big thing at the beginning was that there was no process. They said there's no process for name restoration. My sister's a lawyer. She said, let's make a process. So we demanded they create a process. They created a process. We followed that process to a T. Some of the white wealthy homeowners around the lake determined that they didn't think that the process was fair or left them out, even though they were invited and never came to any meetings. That went to the Minnesota Supreme Court. And last year, the process was upheld by the Minnesota Supreme Court. And luckily, the name is still Bedemakaska. And the process cannot be questioned now. And this is a process that can be used at other spaces and other places to build awareness and acknowledgement. And part of it is educating people and letting them know that you don't take no for an answer. That when people tell you there is no process, you look for that process or you create the process. A lot of us are educated as Native folks, and we're in these seats, and we can advocate for these things. The Native Truth Project had actually said recently that 40% of Americans don't know that we exist as Native people. The NCAI had actually recently done a report that said that 87% of state history standards across the country have no mention of Native American history or people post-1900. We're treated as people of the past. And even when our past is not remembered at some of these public spaces, we can go there, we can demand signage, we can create public art to teach people about who we are, and we can help people understand that we're still here today and that these places still matter to us.
Wopila Kanka, thank you very much. That is so well stated, because myself, even though I am an enrolled member at Standing Rock, my roots are here. My family was uprooted after the 1862 U.S. Dakota War and taken out of the state, out of our home, which is why my mother says the reason why I came back here is because I was pulled back to help my people, and I came back to my homeland.
Absolutely, so, those roots are strong.
It is. So I really appreciate the fact that you address that, the fact that you can be displaced, that you can be taken away from your initial homeland and the origin of your people, but that still draws you back. That pull is very strong, and if you can adhere to that, it'll bring you back to where you need to be. So thank you very much for those words. It really means a lot. So now we're going to move on to President Larson. He's going to talk about the recent transfer from the state of Minnesota or Minnesota Makoche to the Lower Sioux Indian community. And what we want to ask you really is how long was this actual process in the works, and who prompted it? Like, was it actually from the tribe itself, or was it the state? And really, why was it important to the tribe to have ownership in this case versus like maybe co-management or maybe another arrangement?
Talkiapi, Talki Chop me do. Itancha Chanchayapi, Itancha Minnesota Indian Affairs Council. Hello, my relatives. My Dakota name literally takes more than a day to understand, but short version is rolling bull. When that lead bull sees danger coming like a storm and gathers the herd and faces that storm, The storm passes, looks back, says that sees everything's okay, and he's wallowing and kicking up dirt. So that's the very, very short version of my name. I am president here, Lower Sioux Indian Community. Historically, we call this area Chashayapi, where they make the trees red. I am from the Wahinkpe, Iwahe, Arrowhead clan, and the process itself began back in the early 2000s. The Minnesota Historical Society was having budget problems, and they were talking about closing some sites, and the local one here, the Lower Sioux site, was one of them that was possibly going to be closed. So there was talk with the tribe about, we didn't want it closed. We had people working there. We thought the story was important, the interpretation of the area, the very significant, one of the most significant areas in this state, not just for the Native people, but for the state itself. We believe the site of the beginning of War of 1862. They reached an agreement to have us manage the site. And they said, well, if you can show us that you can take care of it, we can talk about maybe a transfer, maybe turning the land over to the tribe at some point. So in about 2004, they said, well, we've been showing you we can do this, and let's talk about, are you still willing to turn the land over? So they said, let's see what we can do. Part of the process is a public comment period. And during that public comment period, there were some, of course, that were against it, giving Indians back land that was taken. And it was passing okay until the local township spoke up and said they didn't want this to happen. We don't understand, because it's not like the MHS pays taxes on the land, but they didn't want it, so the process stopped. I happen to know my aunt and uncle were both on council at that time, so I've gotten some firsthand information there. So since 2004, we still manage the site. MHS gave, I think, a little less than $20,000 a year to keep it going, and the tribe put in the rest. Just because, again, that was a very important story that needs to be told. I was elected in 2013, and like I said, I had the stories from my dad and my aunt, and just approached the rest of the council. I was elected then, and in 2015, I approached the rest of the council and said, what do you think about seeing what they say now? It's been over 10 years. So they said, look, it doesn't hurt to ask. So we reached out to MHS. Then the executive director was Steve Elliott, and he was receptive. All right, so they didn't say no, so let's see where we can go with this. It was something that was important to us. Know it or not, our original reservation went from Mankato up the Minnesota River, 10 miles on each side, all the way to the South Dakota border. And now it's reduced to less than 2,000 acres is what we ended up with. Land base is important for the growth of a tribe, health of a tribe. Housing is important. Not that that's what we want that for, but just being able to expand is important. So we reached out. They were not opposed to it. So we said, okay, how do we do it? We came up with ideas. We contacted our local legislators, Senator Dames and Representative Torkelson. They were very receptive to it. They actually offered to author a bill to do it legislatively. So they could have went in and just, at legislation, they say, we're going to do this. And if it passed, it would have been done. But we thought, we're making a relationship with MHS. We want to try to do this the correct way. Like Kate was saying earlier, creating a process. And there were many roadblocks or barriers, I should say. MHS, DNR, SHPO, our tribe, our TIPO, our legal. We met over and over. Some meetings hosted here, some meetings hosted at their offices, and also brought the Emeritus Board down and had a meeting at the site with some of us from Tribal Council, some of the tribe. Just kind of had a conversation, shared a meal, and they asked the same thing. Why was it important? Our story from us is important. We weren't trying to change the way that interpretation was going at the site from MHS's perspective. We were just trying to add to it, to give the full picture. So there were many times where we thought we were right there. And all of a sudden, most of the time it was from SHPO, like, all right, there's a lock-on status on part of this property. Well, you can't just transfer something over when that is part of it. So they were tasked with trying to find another piece of land of equal value that they could transfer that land and water conservation status to. They did it. They followed, they kept their word. They wanted to get this done too. And the executive director spot changed. Kent Whitworth was brought in, and we met quite a few times. And you make relationships. That's what all of this whole process is about. I think a big piece of it is, what is your mindset in the beginning? Do you want to be adversarial, or do you want to try to make a relationship and do what's best for all concerned? And of course, the tribe and the state have been adversaries since before the state was a state. So we took the mindset of, how can we do it together? And every time, all right, the lock-on status thing was one, we found our way through it. We worked together to navigate those barriers. And finally, in last year, we were able to actually sign the paperwork over. It was during COVID. It was less than desirable, but we invited folks down. Many came, not too many, because we wanted to be safe. We weren't sure what was happening everywhere, but they were willing to come down, and we signed the papers. We had ceremony. We had ceremony out at the site, and it's a chance for us to reconnect to that area that historically was one of our important campsites as we traveled. So I think the biggest thing is getting the correct mindset and making those relationships that are positive. So as much as our legislators were ready to jump in and say, hey, we can do it this way, quick and easy, we appreciated that so much, but we wanted to just try to do it the correct way so that in 5 years, 10 years, 50 years, they can't come back and say, you shouldn't have done that, so we're going to take it back. We navigated the process correctly together.
I think that's a really good point that you made, is having this kind of anti-adversarial relationship, because there's always been that type of a thing, where one always seems to be pitted against the other just naturally somehow, the way things are set up. And to kind of navigate through that diaspora of just negativity and just constant kind of I don't know this, I don't know you, I'm not going to try to get to know you kind of a thing. And I don't need to get to know you because really, when you think about it, I already do somehow, and I don't need to get into this. And so I think that was a really good point to make, that we have to come at it a different way, because obviously these things haven't been working the way that things have been set up, and the relationships haven't been mended the way they should be because of how people view history, or don't really even know history really of what happened, and really understand from a viewpoint of somebody who's come from multi-generational trauma based off of this history. And so that kind of leads me into our last question. So I know, Kate, I would like to ask you, how do you feel about that? Because I know he talked about a bit about how non-native people can kind of really come into focus and can really actually come into a space of growth and of helpfulness and of stewardship, along with the original indigenous, people here, and rather than push them out, but pull them in and actually make some sort of relationships that are long lasting, like he just said. So how do you feel about that?
I think it's absolutely necessary. You know, there are different strategies to this work, to advocating for ourselves as Native people. There's the divide and conquer strategy of the oppressor, which tears us apart and destroys our children. Or there's working together, coming together, finding not even common ground, because sometimes there isn't common ground, but it's learning to have empathy for one another, opening up your worldview to understand others, and realizing that there are different perspectives, there's different experiences, and that they're important. Bringing other people to the table is important. Making sure that there are key decision makers that understand these communities and these stories and these places. Our relationship with this land goes back thousands of years. We're the original caretakers of this land. We carry that responsibility within us. Each of us do. And we have so much to share in terms of the history of this land, the meaning of that connection as human beings here. And I think that more and more we have neighbors now who want to know more about that and who want to work with us. And what we're here to do is to work together to figure out how to live amongst one another and how to be respectful. And that's been a role model for our kids.
Yeah. I really appreciate the points you guys are touching on, because I think it's really great that you say that it's not so much about like everybody believes the same thing or thinks the same way, but can really actually pull what they actually have within themselves and their own commitment to this process and see it through. That we don't always have to be like just directly in line with each other, but the respect has to be there. And I think that President Larson touched on the fact that, where like they're kind of like, it's almost like a training wheels program, where they're like, well, if you can prove that you can actually do this, then maybe we'll talk, and to get beyond that point, to get to a point that like, we're not this like a paternalistic and, a childish kind of thing, but the fact that we're seeing eye to eye, even if it's not really eye to eye based on where we come from or what we know or what we've been like brought up to believe, but to believe the point that we can actually get together enough to make something work. And
Absolutely.
to move forward. Yeah.
And I think that being able, understanding that we're the ones that can tell our own stories, that interpretation of these places is up to us. Our experiences, we can speak for ourselves. And that's something that's, going down to Lower Sioux Agency and going to that museum and seeing that space and the ways in which the tribe has interpreted there is just beautiful. And I definitely recommend that folks go check it out.
Yeah, I totally agree. And this concludes our portion of the panel. So, Wopila Tranka to both of you. Pilama Yayapi to also our newest board member, kind of volunteer, keeping it in the family. So awesome. And I respect and appreciate all of you. So, Wopila Tranka Yalo. And we are living that true sense of Midakoye Oyasin.
Yeah, Hamitaki. Pardon me, my cat just jumped up here. Kili Shaka Makiapie, Sisito Wachpetuan Dakota Oyate Emataha, Hello, my relatives. My name is Keely Shiaka. I'm from the Sistinwafton, Dakota Oyate. I was born and grew up in the Twin Cities. I'm the first generation of my family to actually be born and raised once again in our homelands of Minnesota, Makoche. But I didn't always feel welcome, understood, or represented here. So I'm very humbled to be a part of this team and contribute my part to increase visibility, strengthen our connection to our homelands, and protect our sacred sites as the environmental justice educator and organizer at Lower Phelan Creek Project. I know the work we do here is making my ancestors proud and our future generations, and I'm just very humbled to be a part of it. Another wonderful thing about this work is that for me, I'm constantly learning from the community and learning from people that I admire so much, like Dr. Kate Bean and President Robert Larson. Kate talked about her work having ripple effects, and that's absolutely true. We've been approached by the community many times asking, what's the original name of Lake Phelan? What's the name of Phelan Creek? And that makes me so hopeful because that's coming from the non-Native community. And so I just want to say Pidamia Yapi to Dr. Kate Bean, her family, and President Larson for the work you've done for our Oyate. I now have the pleasure of welcoming a new friend of mine and longtime friend of Lower Phelan Creek Project, John Shepard. He is an associate professor at Hamline University and assistant director of the School Center for Global Environmental Education. His work in environmental media and videography have earned him over 36 national and international awards over the years. We at Lower Phelan Creek Project are honored to have had John lend his skills and expertise over the years on multiple video projects relating the sacred waters of Minnesota Makoche, the return of Phelan Creek, and the history of Wakantipi. I want to say now, Tanya Yahi, or welcome to John Shepard as he speaks about his work for our organization.
Well, thank you so much, Keely. And hello, everybody. I'm very pleased to be able to be here with you this evening, and even more so to have had the opportunity to work closely with Keely and Michela and Maggie and Sam over these last years. And my connection with Lower Phelan Creek Project really began through my work and introductions by Dan McGinnis and Chip Lindeke, board members. But it's really deepened in a very personal way, and I just want to share that story briefly with you. As I spent time at the Bruce Vento Sanctuary at Wakantipi with these colleagues of mine at Lower Phelan Creek, I began to grasp the importance of that place and the history of it, the importance of it for the Dakota, but for our entire community. And then after being engaged in doing work with the organization, I learned some family history that I realized through that I actually had a personal connection, and it was not one that I felt entirely comfortable or proud of. I learned that my great-great-grandfather was the engineer, the railroad engineer that laid the tracks, or his group of workers laid the first railroad tracks to go in front of Wakantipi Cave. And having spent time there, I've seen and felt and heard today the impact of that form of industry, the damage that it has done to that site. And I can only imagine if that were such an important part of my own heritage, how strongly I would feel about that. If you've been there, you know that the trains almost surround you on three sides. It's very loud, the industrial noise. The trains cut off all views of the river in this amazing and very important place. So having learned about that and realizing my own family, and I would say all of us who are non-Native in America, one way or another, have benefited from the railroads, the impacts of the civilization that in so many ways has been so destructive for Dakota, we have benefited from. So I feel that it is a particular honor for me to be able to to work with the Dakota community here at Wakantipi, both professionally through the educational projects that we're doing, but also financially. I feel it's an honor for me to be able to contribute back to the organization and to do that as a form of healing. For me, it's important personally, but I think it's something in a way we all share. We share the burden of that history, and I think we all have the opportunity to be part of the healing. So my invitation to all of you is to join me and so many other people tonight in supporting the good work of the Lower Phelan Creek Project. So thank you.
Thank you so much, John, for being on tonight and sharing that story. It was just amazing to me to hear that when John first shared that with me, and to come here and share that with the larger community, that connection that he has made to this site, the connections that we all have, whether they're go back time immemorial, like Kate was talking about, or whether they're the past 150, 200 years, or even just more recently. I know we've had so many people who have made just brand new connections. They're maybe brand new to Minnesota. They've never lived here. Their families have never lived here, but they've made a recent connection to the site. So just hearing those stories are always so amazing. So I just want to say thank you to John Shepard for coming and sharing that. And Glenn, one of our board members, is here with us tonight, and I'll turn it over to you, Glenn.
Thank you, Maggie. Good evening, everybody, and thank you for being here. I'm Glenn Johnson, and I'm a relatively new member of the board. I joined just in June of 2020, so it's been a little over a year that I've been on the board, and I'm very, very honored to be part of this organization and to have the opportunity to help with the amazing work that they're doing. Maggie asked that I talk for just a minute about how I became interested in getting involved. And so if you don't mind, I'm going to talk for just a minute about my family history. And it certainly doesn't go back anywhere near the time of the Native people. But at any rate, in the late 1880s, a very poor Swedish immigrant by the name of Andrew Engstrom moved his family with 5 children into Swede Hollow. And they may or may not have had electricity there. They did not have indoor plumbing. One of his daughters was Hilda Engstrom, and that was my grandmother. Andrew Engstrom was my great-grandfather. At some point, when they had become established in the community, they were able to move up to the Payne Avenue area and lived in a home there and spent the rest of their lives there. At some point, Hilda met a young Swedish farmer who had moved to St. Paul. He'd come to the United States at the age of 3 and moved to St. Paul seeking fame and fortune, which he found as a milkman driving a horse-drawn milk wagon, and then as a janitor. And they raised 3 children on the east side on Jenks Street. One of those was my father, Earl Johnson, and he raised 4 children on the east side. I was one of those, and I raised 3 sons on the east side for a period of time over by Mounds Park, just off of Earl Street. So it's 5 generations of Engstroms and Johnsons on the east side, and I feel a great attachment to the community. And when I found out about the work that Lower Phelan Creek is doing, I knew I wanted to get involved. Starting with the work in Swede Hollow, which was a dump at one point when I was a kid back in the 70s, and now it's a beautiful park. One of the last things I did with my father when about a year before he passed was to take him for a walk. He was in a wheelchair, and I walked him through Swede Hollow, and he was thrilled to see what had been done. Lower Phelan Creek has played a critical role in the establishment and maintaining a Bruce Vento Nature Sanctuary. And you heard about the work to daylight Phelan Creek. Imagine Minnehaha Creek in Minneapolis having been turned into a storm sewer. I mean, when I found out as a young man what had happened to Phelan Creek, I couldn't believe it. And it's so important, I think, that we fix that. And now the building of the Wakan Tipi Center and honoring the Dakota people in their sacred places, it's just so important. And so I ask all of you, please open your checkbooks, be generous. We're getting close to the $25,000 match. I see 22,800 on the screen now. So please help this fabulous organization with the work that we're trying to do. And thank you again. I'll pass it over to Maggie, and she's going to talk for a minute or two about a couple of specific giving programs.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Glenn, for sharing your story as well. So for those of you who are about ready to make your donation to the organization, right now we're at $22,800 against our $25,000 goal. So we're very close to our challenge match and unlocking that entire $25,000 challenge. But I just wanted folks to know also that when you go to our fall fundraiser page on our website, you'll notice that there's multiple giving options. One of them is a give now for a one-time gift. Then there are two other options. One is called the Tiwahe Giving Program, and one is called the Tioshpai Giving Program. And these are two new programs that we just started this year. As I mentioned, we're a growing organization, and we developed these two new ways to give to our organization to help support our ongoing operations and our growth in the coming years. So really none of the work that we do is possible without individual contributions. And so the Tioshpai Giving Program, Tioshpai means extended family in the Dakota language. And so this is basically the people that you camp with, the people who you depend on and rely on and work with every day in your life. And so the Tioshpai Giving Program is for people who really care about the work that we're doing, who care about these sites here on the east side that we're trying to protect, and who are able to commit to $1,000 total pledge over a number of years at a monthly giving level that works for you. So there are multiple different options to doing that. The cool thing about this giving program is that if you can give $20 a month, that $20 a month over 4 years is going to be $1,000 total pledge. And what we're going to do tonight is if you pledge to that $1,000 over 4 or 5 years at $20 a month, that whole $1,000 pledge will go towards the match. And so it won't just be the $20 you're giving this month, it'll be the full pledge that you're pledging to. So that's the Tioshpai Giving Program. The Tiwahe Giving Program, Tiwahe means family, basically the people that are in your home, the people that are really close to you. That's your Tiwahe. And so the Tiwahe Giving Program is for people who have the ability and can commit to giving at $1,000 or more per year for multiple years. And so those giving programs, again, it's the total pledge that goes towards our match. And so pledging to give over an extended period of time will help us be able to continue the work that we do and also help us unlock this match tonight. So thank you everybody so much for all of your donations tonight. Thank you for supporting our work. We couldn't do any of it without you. And we really, really appreciate being here with all of you. We hope you enjoyed everything that our speakers talked about tonight. And I just want to give a huge shout out to everybody who came and shared their stories and experiences with our community tonight. So, Wobila. Good night.
Okay, so we've heard a lot about relationships, and we've heard a lot about connections to the land. My family as well has come to Minnesota from the Dakotas, Standing Rock, from my mother's side. And this is our home, this is our place. And as you can tell, we are all related. If we're Swedish, if we're Mexican, if we're Dakota or Lakota, we are all related. So we thank you so much for your time, for your attention, for your interest, for your generosity. And we consider all of you part of our Tioshpai. So on behalf of the Lower Phelan Creek family here, Hanhepe Washte, good night everyone, and do take care of yourself. Bye now.